Hey everybody, welcome to CAF Warbird Tube, the show where we talk about World War II, aviation, history, and so much more. Warbird Tube is produced by the Commemorative Air Force, the world's largest flying museum. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and honor through flight and living history experiences. The CAF began the Warbird movement more than 65 years ago, and thanks to the support of individuals like you, we continue to grow strong. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and now our host, Steve Buss. Thanks for watching and keep 'em flying.
Good evening, airplane fans, and welcome to CAF Warbird Tube for this evening. We are glad that you're with us for episode number 181. We're going to check in with the Central Texas Wing and their P-39 project, Miss Connie. And if you have watched Warbird Tube in the past, you know that this P-39 has been featured on the show a couple of times, and I think you will be surprised, as I was, to see exactly what the Central Texas Wing is doing with the airplane today. All right, talk more about that in just a moment. But if you're joining us for the first time, welcome to Warbird Tube, and if you're a loyal Warbird Tube fan, glad to have you back with us. Now, if you enjoy our content tonight, please don't hesitate to spread it across your favorite social media platform. We definitely do appreciate it. Now, Warbird Tube is made possible by the Commemorative Air Force. To find out more about the CAF itself, our events, our aircraft, local units, or how you can be part of the fun, just visit our website, commemorativeairforce.org. Now, as you're watching tonight, you might have some questions. And if you do, just put those in the chat box. We'll answer them either during the presentation or before we sign off. But either way, we'll try to get you an answer before the evening is over. So the P-39 Airacobra, Miss Connie, is the subject of tonight's episode. And joining me is Kevin Allred and Zach Armstrong. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, Kevin, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved with the CAF.
I'm retired from the Air Force 4 years ago. I used to be a C-130 navigator, so flew big airplanes with props. And we ended up in San Antonio with San Marcos about 45 minutes away, and I couldn't pass up the opportunity to go work on all the airplanes. So I went up there, checked it out, and before you knew it, I was helping work on all the airplanes, and especially the P-39. It's a good starting point for a new guy to start figuring out how to work on airplanes by scraping paint and then moving on to the more complex things. So it's kind of how I got started there.
So Kevin, did you have a background in aviation mechanics at all, or is this you're learning as you go?
I'm an operator, and but I don't, and I'm a private pilot as well. But I don't have enough hours to be able to do the flying side of things. So I jumped in on the maintenance side of things, and in the last year and a half, I've learned to do a ton of stuff on how to take care of these old airplanes. And it's kind of like working on somebody's old pickup truck, the technology that's involved in them. So it's really neat to be able to do that stuff and learn how it works and whatnot. So it's been pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about CAF is that you can come into it without necessarily a mechanics background or even a pilot's background for that matter, and you get to a wing like Central Texas, and they bring you in and kind of show you the ropes and give you the paint scrapers and things.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of Scotch-Brite in your future, right?
Oh, big time. got to learn a lot about that in the last couple of weeks.
There you go. Zach, how about you? How did you get involved with the wing and the P-39?
I moved back to Texas in 2005 and got affiliated with the Centex wing. Back then, I was going to all the different air shows and doing all that kind of stuff with the different airplanes that we had in the fleet, and family and life and all that kind of stuff kind of took over a little bit. So I had a little bit of a hiatus, and I got started back about 3 or 4 years ago. This is the airplane that brought me to the wing in 2005 because I like the unique kind of different type of airplanes. And the P-39 is just one of those things that's always fascinated me. And so now I'm serving as a development officer for the staff that we have for the Centex wing, and also a mission pilot for the T6. Actually, next week we'll be starting the C-45 training for me, and then I'm also in line for the B-25 as well. So, yeah.
Excellent. What are the aside from the P-39? What are the other aircraft that are with Central Texas?
We've got the C-47. That's all brother, which is probably one of the flagship airplanes of the CAF, and pretty much all of the Warbirds because of its history. We've got the B-25, the Yellow Rose, the C-45, and we've got a T-6 Red Tail, and then we also have a BT-13, the P-39, and then a U-3, which is a civilian 310, military designation for the 310. So,
is that the blue canoe?
That is it. That is it.
It's a very, 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 very pretty airplane. I always admired the paint on that.
I was actually just talking to a prospective member today of the wing, and we were talking about the U-3 in particular, and saying how that airplane was definitely a utilitarian bird in the Air Force, as well as we use it as well for, just shuttling people around, and it's just been a real asset to us, and it always goes, and it does its mission still to this day. So
very good. So we're looking at a picture of the P-39. This is the exact same airplane that's in your hangar today. This is Oshkosh 1978. When did the P-39 come into the CAF fleet? Do you remember?
It was I think it was donated to the CAF in '68.
Okay.
And when CAF got a hold of it, it started a basic restoration there to end up looking like it looks like it does in that picture that we're looking at right now. This first iteration of restoration.
So that was in the 70s. It's been a flying airplane ever since. So that was Oshkosh 78. This is Oshkosh a couple of years ago when it was there, painted up as Old Crow, Bud Anderson's first airplane, P-39. Tell us about the name. So it's gone through several different paint schemes through the years, and we'll show some slides of some of those. But it always seems to have the name Miss Connie on it. Where did that come from?
Well, a little bit of the story I know on that, and Zach, jump in if you know more, is one of the members, it was his wife, one of the members who helped with the originally take care of it back in the 70s. It was named after his wife, and that's where Miss Connie comes from. I don't know if you know any better details than that, Zach.
Pretty much it. It's kind of one of those lore type deals around the wing, but that's what we got.
Well, very good. As Zach, as the development officer, of course, you're in charge of raising funds to help keep not only this airplane, but the rest of the airplanes in the wing going. But tonight we're kind of focusing in on P-39 because that's one of the airplanes that are featured in the 12 Planes of Christmas. So so we're looking forward to that. And really the airplane itself has had a great history in the CAF, and has flown many different air shows and missions throughout the years.
Yeah, it's been a staple, and then the thing is, because it is such a rare aircraft, we get requests for it to, when it's airworthy, obviously, for it to fly everywhere, and we really enjoy being able to get it out there and talk about an airplane that not a whole lot of people know about, especially one that fought in the Eastern Front, which a lot of people here in the U.S. are not super familiar with as well. So.
Yeah, the P-39, P-63, P-39 in particular, really wasn't a favorite of the United States Airmen, but a lot of them went lend-lease to to Russia, and they fought quite well, during World War II for the Russians. One of the big problems, of course, with the P-39 is didn't have the supercharger, so it was not very effective at high altitude. But at the lower, medium, and lower altitudes, it really was a very effective fighter.
Its roll rate is actually really quite good, even for World War II standards, and with a mid-engine, it handles pretty well. It's just one of those airplanes that they fixed all that with the P-63 when they put the turbocharger on it, but the P-39 itself, the Russians really enjoyed it because of their theater of operation.
Yeah, when the RAF got them, which they ended up turning them back to us. They didn't like them, but when they did initial tests, they flew them against captured measurements, and at low altitude, they were really effective against going against ME-109s, which kind of surprised everyone, because when they were flying them high altitude, it didn't have a chance. But when you got down below 15,000 feet, they were on pretty equal footing. So it's a pretty good airplane when it comes to that low to medium altitude, like you're saying.
And it's interesting how the history of the airplane has sort of been rewritten through the years as more information comes out. I mean, obviously during World War II, there wasn't a whole lot of information that was being transferred back and forth, but now as the years have gone by, we really see that the P-39, even though it was not an American favorite or even British favorite, really was kind of an innovative aircraft, and one of the first tricycle gear aircraft. You know, the engine behind the cockpit is a very unique layout. And Zach, I think that's what you said kind of drew you to the airplane as well, as it's just sort of eclectic.
Well, any airplane that's got two doors for one pilot, you know, and roll down windows is kind of cool as a fighter. So
it really is. And you know, we are very thankful for the Central Texas wing. You see it in the Big D paint scheme here. This was done up a number of years ago. Jack Ogilvy, who was from the Dallas area, flew P-39s in World War II, so kind of put that paint scheme together for him several years ago. It's a very fascinating story that he had as well, and it's a very subdued you know, livery. It's not something very flashy, but it does tell the story. And Jack was yeah.
Oh, good.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's just the whole airplane itself is kind of, I don't know, it's one of those airplanes that just, the lines of it, you know, are really sleek. The airplane, I haven't flown it yet, but one of these days I will. And it's just, like I said, it's one of these airplanes that just is kind of subdued in its history. But it had all these different designs with the mid-engine, you know, the cannon through the prop spinner, and you know, it's just the history of the airplane itself and what it did, and then the fact that the CAF operates the airplane as well and kind of preserves that and demonstrates that to people is really what kind of brings, you know, my attraction to this particular airframe.
Evan, what are your thoughts along those same sort of lines?
Kind of the same thing. I mean, I first time I saw this tail particularly was I think it was in 21, about 3 years ago. I had the big deep paint job on it, and I knew what a P-39 was, and you know, some of the stories, but until I started working on it, I really learned a lot about it, on the uniqueness of the 37mm cannon, the tricycle gear, the car doors, you know, all those kind of things that are kind of non-standard for a fighter at that time, and learning how innovative that was and how far ahead that was of design, because, you know, by the end of the war and immediately after that into the 50s, a lot of this stuff was standard. But Bell was the first one to come up with these kinds of things and the airplanes to get them out the door. So it's really kind of neat to see that, the evolution and the difference between this was built for a requirement in 1935, and see the difference of what was built, which met all those requirements, but what they needed in 1941, you know, to fight that fight then. There's a big difference, and that's part of why it's not a favorite with the U.S. Air Force, because it was built for those requirements, what they thought war was going to look like, not what it actually did when they got into the fight in 40 and 41. So
yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
And of course, a couple of years ago, you made the decision to paint the airplane in the colors and some of the nose art of Bud Anderson's first fighter, the P-39 that he flew, also called Old Crow. How did that come about? What was the kind of the inspiration to do that?
Well, we had a wing member, John Syria, that we had gotten checked out and qualified in the airplane. It was a big motivation for us to be able to take it to Oshkosh, 2 years ago, and we found out that Bud was going to be there. It was one of those things to where we didn't have to do a whole lot to modify it because the airplane's always been green, even from the 70s. And when the tribute to him, we found out was going to happen and we could participate in it, the wing just kind of jumped in and said, "Hey, this is something that we want to be able to do." And John made it happen to get the airplane up there, and seeing that picture of Bud in the airplane and all that kind of stuff is makes it worth it.
Yeah. By the way, that's John right there in the cockpit. With his custom gloves, so he could use the touch screens.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah, but it was a big hit at Oshkosh. I mean, for so many people, they remember Bud Anderson and Old Crow in the P-51, but to actually see this aircraft brought back a whole new sort of a chapter in his history, and really brought that back to life.
It did, yeah. That was the neat thing about it, is that I don't think the general public realizes how many different airframes that most of the pilots in World War II flew, both from their primary trainers all the way up through their assigned combat aircraft. Bud did not fly the P-39 in combat. It was a stateside airplane for him, I believe. And but the fact that you would take a combat qualified pilot and put them in airplane A, and then tomorrow they get assigned airplane B and they say just go fly it, was pretty neat, and it just kind of shows the progression as well for Bud Anderson.
Yeah. And then of course the hero shot coming up here. that's Jack Ogilvy right there, Wings Over Dallas a number of years ago. It was quite an honor to interview him sitting in front of a P-39 so he could tell his stories of flying a P-39 in World War II. It was one of the more unique interviews that I've ever had the honor of being able to do, and I think for everyone who was there, it was fascinating to, first of all, to hear his story firsthand, but then to also see a P-39 sitting right behind him. And then, of course, when the interview was over, the pilot jumped in and went out and did some flying and do a little demonstration of the P-39 for us. It was quite a magical event, and appreciate the wing for putting the time and effort in to make that happen. And I know Jack appreciated it immensely, as Bud Anderson did as well at Oshkosh. But tonight we're here to kind of raise a little money and awareness for the airplane itself, because it's undergoing a restoration. So kind of walk us through how this, we're talking about a ground up restoration for the P-39. How did this come about?
We originally had, actually after Oshkosh, not too long after Oshkosh, we noticed an anomaly with the engine. It got sent out for an inspection, and which basically came back and said, "Hey, we need to get the motor overhauled." At the time, that was going to take a while, and so the wing staff said, "Hey, let's get some things done to the airplane that we want to do." As we got into it, the issues with the vendor on the engine delivery is pushed back significantly, and ultimately, we, as an organization, wanted to get the airplane restored from the ground up, because since the 70s, to our knowledge, it hadn't been done. And so there were some things that we wanted to fix. As we opened the airplane up, we said, this is the right plan, the right thing. And we've got some great volunteers that have been helping with it, which we'll see in a little bit, just kind of the condition it is. And so we made the decision to go forward and do it correctly. So.
And by ground up, and you'll see some photos later in the slideshow, that it truly is ground up, and it's still, some pieces are coming off before it'll go all back together. But so we'll start here in the cockpit, just to explain a little bit about what your plans are for the office of the P-39.
So the goal of the cockpit is going to be to basically refurbish it as close to original as we can get it. With the addition, of course, with some modern radios and GPS so that they can fly. And as you can see, there's a couple holes in the cockpit now, and all the instruments are going to be needed to be come out, be redone. So we'll get them all the lettering repainted, get everything recalibrated, and get it back in the place where they're supposed to be, and get it as close to the original as we can. And we'll research from the manuals that are out there. We've got copies of everything you can think of on what this thing's supposed to look like, and then whatever photographs and stuff we can find to make it as close as we can to what it looked like originally, and get it in that kind of shape again. So that's kind of our goal with the whole airplane, and especially the cockpit.
Are you planning on doing something similar to what That's All Brother has in the cockpit, where you've kind of hidden the modern avionics? They're there when they need to fly, but when it's on static display, you've kind of got them covered up?
It's all going to depend on how that's going to work with the room in the cockpit, because and That's All Brother, there's a lot more room to work with, and the instruments the fakes we were able to put in there in front of the modern avionics. It just depends how that's going to work out, and what type of radios we end up putting back into it when we get that far along in the process. So we got a while before we get to there.
Very true. And as you pointed out here, all the little dings and knocks in the skin of the airplane over the years kind of started to show themselves when you got the paint off.
Yeah, that checks. As we started taking the paint off, we started finding small dents, and then we found some bigger ones. And as we started getting further, more and more of the airplane, we found panels that we're actually going to have to remanufacture ourselves and make and replace, because they've got dings and damage on them that we don't, like Zach was saying, we want to do it right. We don't just want to slap Bondo on it and paint it. We want to get the airplane in the condition it should be in. So as we've dug through that, it looked great, and then you look underneath the paint and you're like, oh wow, we didn't know that. And so as we find those, we figure out how we're going to go forward and repair some of those. You'll see that in some of the next pictures of when we get to the tail. So,
do you know approximately how much of the aircraft skin will need to be replaced?
No, not yet. There's some areas, like if you look on the tail, there's some in the horizontal stab. I've been working on that the last couple of weeks, and you can find some dents, but then the question is, how do you fix that? Because it's pretty much one sealed in piece. So that might end up not replacing the panel, but finding another way to repair it. And so we're going to have to dig into each area where there's big dings and damage, how much we're able to actually repair it, or if we're going to find some other method with epoxy or something to fix those dents versus replacing the skin. So we've got a ways before we get all of those figured out.
Is there anything in the P-39 that's a rare piece or a rare part that you need to find, or are you pretty much able to, either work off the shelf or be able to create the things that you need to help with the restoration?
For now, we're able to manufacture things. We haven't gotten to the point where we haven't been able to find anything yet, but we're working with different vendors to see if they can manufacture some pieces for us, and we're starting to have good luck with that. We found somebody who might be able to do some of the bigger pieces for us, because there's a couple that we need. And then some of the stuff we're going to manufacture ourselves. You'll see some of the skin we're going to do ourselves. Like I said, we've got a couple guys that are good at sheet metal, so we'll be able to do that. When we reskin the control surfaces, which are fabric covered, we're going to do that ourselves. But as you took the fabric off right here, you can't tell, but once you pull the fabric off, then you find the things that are bent and damaged. So we're going to go back and repair all of those. But we've got guys who can do that kind of stuff for us. So we're in pretty good shape for that right now. But I mean, it could all change when we open up another part of the airplane and find something else that needs work on it. So we're getting there.
Very good. With fabric covering, I would think with the aircraft that are already in the hangar at the Central Texas Wing, probably got some folks who are pretty well versed in fabric covering.
Yeah, we've got a couple around who know how to do it. So we're gonna hopefully they'll teach the rest of us how to do it. So then we can build that skill, because it's not something you see on modern airplanes. So we want to keep guys around that know how to do that stuff with obviously the right supervision on getting there. So it's kind of a neat thing. I'm kind of looking forward to learning how to do that. So it'll be fun.
Very good. You'll be an expert at rib stitching in the next couple of months, right?
Yeah, we'll see.
So we're looking at the airplane. You said this is probably about last fall that this picture was taken as you started to take it apart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can see in the middle where the engine bay where that's supposed to go. The doors are off, and we're working on basically stripping the wings and getting some of the panels out, starting to remove some of the panels and identifying where we need to do the work. So, and there's just a lot. Like one of the panels on top of the wing, you can see where the little red paint cans are sitting. There's a stress panel there that's got about 250 screws. So to undo 250 screws on each wing to get that panel out so we could get it down and start doing work on it. So you can see that kind of stuff is time consuming to figure out what's going to do. But the really cool thing about that is when we pull those panels off and we found the fuel cells, I think all but one are original fuel cells stamped 1943, wow. Rubber fuel cells. So that was pretty amazing to me when I popped that up and I found those labels. Like, holy cow. I mean, who would have thought a rubber fuel cell would last, 80 years?
80 years, yeah. Mm-hmm. And my follow-up question was, are they still in good shape, or do you have to replace them, or are you thinking about replacing them just as preventative maintenance?
They're in pretty good shape. I don't know if we're going to replace those because they are in good shape, but there's lots of little rubber connectors and hoses in between them. Those we're definitely going to go back and replace all of those. But the fuel cells themselves, because it's probably not something we're going to be able to find. So if they're in good shape and they're not leaking, we're going to hang on to them because we want to try to keep most of the as much original as we can, and where safety and smart design allows us. So
yeah, another view of the airplane from last fall. Mm-hmm. Were you involved in starting to take it apart, or were there others who started and then now you're just kind of coming out of the project?
I kind of picked up after the engine was out. I don't know if Zach can talk to any of that. When I got here, the engine was out, and a lot of those big pieces were gone. So, yeah. But
because we that was one of our first problem areas, or the first problem area. That was actually one of the first things that happened, is it came out pretty quick. So, it was sitting like that for quite a while, and then we started working on it from there.
Which is the follow-up question is, what was it like to make that decision as a wing to say, this airplane needs more work than just an engine? We need to tear it down. We need to redo it. There had to be some probably spirited debate that went on in the wing.
Ultimately, and this is something I give credit to the wing staff as well as the wing membership. It really wasn't. When we got into it and we said we have this time, we need to utilize it the best way that we can, and then ultimately the safety aspect of it. There is no better time to do what we're doing to the airplane, right now. And so it's, as anything, the question always comes in is, how are we going to pay for it? But we knew that this was the right decision to do, because it hadn't been done before to this airplane. And it was painful to make that decision, but everybody was in pretty much unanimous agreement to get it done.
Yeah. And there must be sort of an odd feeling to start taking it apart, knowing that, it's a beautiful paint scheme, great airplane, engine's gone, right? But then you're like, all right, we've got to start tearing all these panels out and starting, like you said, 250 screws on the panel on the wing over the fuel bladders. That has to be a little heart-rending when you look at doing that, even though you're doing it for the right reasons, but it's kind of hard to take an airplane apart.
It's especially when the airplane just flew to, at the time it had just flown to Oshkosh and back, right? And so we had a crew member that was qualified in the airplane, which was a hard thing to do for this because it is a unique airplane. It handles uniquely compared to the other conventional fighters of the day. And we had it to where it flew back and forth and up to Wisconsin. And so it at first glance, man, everything's humming on all cylinders. And then literally they were not. So, that was probably the biggest, change that we had to get accustomed to, is that we do have to shift gears here. We do have to bring the vehicle to a stop, get everybody off and evaluate it. And it was, that was the hard one, just when you think you get over the hump, but again, when you look at it now and you see the work that Kevin and the other maintenance staff are putting into the airplane, 100% that this was the right decision. And I'm really excited to see what it's going to be like in the future when it gets all back together.
Yeah. Sean is asking a question. He's wondering what those black kind of trays or troughs on the right side of the aircraft are. Those to recover fuel and oil and other fluids.
Yeah, so those actually go underneath that's All Brothers engines to catch the oil and drippings off the bottom of the airplane. So that must have been a convenient place to put them out of the way.
Well, yes. Well, it's a busy hangar. You got a lot of stuff going on in there. So the engine, that's the Allison engine, is that the same engine that was in the P-40, if I remember right?
1710, yeah.
Okay.
It was.
So let's do a little speculation here. One of our viewers is wondering if they would have put a supercharger on the Allison in the P-39. What do you think? Would it have been a competitive fighter at higher altitudes?
It actually did have a supercharger. It didn't have a turbo supercharger, so that was the thing. Yeah, it had a mechanical supercharger on it, which its critical altitude was only 12,000 feet for the supercharger to basically stop or start losing performance. And it's a great hypothetical, but all you have to do is look at the P-63. The airplanes look very similar, but they're actually very different. But I mean, the concept of both airplanes is the same. And of course, the P-63 just was. People raved about that airplane when they got it in their hands, and it served very, very well. So,
and I know, Zach, you've not flown the airplane yet, but hopefully you've sat in it in the cockpit and just kind of get your estimation of the cockpit layout, because it is very unique with the the doors. Basically, they look like car doors, right? You can roll the window down, the whole thing.
Yeah.
But your estimation of that, I mean, what does that kind of feel like?
Well, it's actually a pretty comfortable cockpit. You do have your drive shaft gearbox running through underneath you. You can see it in that one picture below the stick there. So your feet kind of have these little wells that they're in, but it's actually a really, really comfortable airplane. Pretty much everything on it's electric. Like I said, the door thing is just crazy why you have two doors for one pilot. That stuff's kind of nuts. But the visibility is excellent in the airplane. You sit up really high. Again, for World War II, it was incredible on how high you set up. And so it's a neat perch on sitting up there in the airplane. And it, like I said, ergonomics are pretty good for what it is.
And was there an emergency release on those doors? I mean, was there something that you pulled, the door just departed if you needed to bail out, or literally you had to push it open to get out?
I don't know about that. That would be something that maybe Kevin does, but I don't know the answer to that question. I know you can roll the window down and hop out that way, but
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I've read some of the -1, but I hadn't gotten to that part yet. So
yeah.
Hmm.
Well, that's good. So we're looking at what the airplane kind of looks like today, and we notice that the tail is gone, and there's more paint scraped off, and there's fewer and fewer pieces as we're going on.
Yeah, we've got on our second floor. You can see up there we've got a row of shelves with nothing but P-39 parts up there, as we're scavenging off of it to figure out what needs to be replaced and what we can reuse and those kinds of things.
So in your estimation, this restoration is probably going to be a couple of years, probably 2, maybe more.
Yeah.
how close do you think you are to the point of not taking any more apart and starting putting back together?
We're pretty far from that because the project was talked about today. I sat down with our chief of maintenance, and we're going to figure out in the next couple of weeks how to take the wings off. So we've got some things that need to be worked on in that. So that's our next project after starting next week, is getting our ground support guys who are really good at manufacturing jigs and racks and things like that to build us something that can hold the fuselage, and then we're going to take the wings off. So we can get in there and get to work on those. So it's going to take us a while. I got out the manual a couple nights ago, and the way it describes taking the wings off is just undo these 30 bolts. Like, that sounds interesting. With the special tool that comes with the airplane. Like, yeah, where are we going to get the special tool that comes with the airplane? So that kind of stuff makes this a level to make this simple process much harder as we dig into it. But it's going to be a while before we get to the point where we're starting to put things back on it, I think.
Being one of the very early tricycle gear aircraft, are there any challenges with the gear themselves?
I know a couple years ago they had some issues with it, and the airplane itself, they put on new brakes because they weren't able to take care of those anymore. Their parts just weren't available. But other than that, the gear it's pretty simple, because the raising and lowering the gear is an electric system, which is pretty forward thinking for back in that time. You know, you look at a modern airplane, fly-by-wire and electrical systems and stuff like that, and you know, here we are, an airplane designed in the late 30s that has that same kind of stuff that is kind of like new gee whiz today. So that has made it a little easier to work on, instead of having a big hydraulic system, because the only hydraulics on the airplane are the brakes. So that makes it a little easier to work on, actually.
Do you know offhand what you changed the brakes in? Or are they redline brakes?
No, I don't know off the top of my head. I know the tires off an F-86, because that's the only thing we could find that would fit and meet the requirements for the speed and the size. So, but
one of the other things about it too is that most people don't understand is that the nose gear on the airplane is non-steerable, so it's a cast ring nose wheel, just like the Cirrus is today and all that kind of. So according to the pilots that have flown the airplane, it handles a lot on the ground like a tail dragger. And how you steer it and handle it and all that kind of fun stuff.
A lot of rudder and brake. We're taking a look now at the tail section, and we can see some of the new pieces that have been already remanufactured and ready to go on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we started on that. Well, we got the tail off a couple months ago, which took us a while, because if you look towards the front end of it, it's I think it said there's 68 screws that hold it on, and so 60 of them super easy to get out, and about 8 or 10 are up in these places where we had to get a tool and bend it and all kinds of stuff to get in there. So we spent literally a couple weeks trying to get in there and getting the right tools to get that off. And then I was talking about the racket sitting on. Some of our ground support guys built that so it would fit that tail, so we could get into an air-conditioned room to work on, because it's, when it's 95 degrees in the hangar, it's not much fun. And then over the last couple weeks, our smart guys have gotten in and figured out what panels we need to start to replace, and you can see those two there have been shaped and are getting ready to be riveted back onto the airplane. And we've got a little more work to do before we get to that step, but you can see that there's quite a few that we're going to replace on the back to ensure that the structure is good and get rid of the dents and damages back there.
Well, and here you're using, an original piece as a template for the replacement.
Yeah, so we had one of our guys is a retired Navy maintainer, and who was a sheet metal guy. So he came in. We took that panel off, and he showed us how to use that as a template to build the next one. And it was really interesting, because it's a piece like this on the spine of the aircraft, and and it mattered how you put it down on to make the template. You got a screw it down from the center and work your way out so you get the right curve and all that, and kind of showed us how to do it. And I mean, it was like watching an artist work. He sat down and did it and knocked it out like, in a day he had it all done, which, we would have eventually figured it out in 2 or 3 weeks, but, having the expert show us how to do it was really, really valuable to us to figure out how that's done, because there will be able to use that skill on other areas around the airplane.
Very good. One of our viewers is wondering if and you've mentioned your special tools and having to kind of make something work. Any chance that any of the tools or fittings or things like that might still exist in Russia, or be able to recover them?
That's a possibility, but the chances of getting a contact to be able to do that, we've got a few contacts with the guys down there in Australia that redid the one that's in Virginia, and occasionally they go out because there's still hulks that were crashed during the war in Australia and across the island. So they dig up those and work on them. So we've got a few contacts down there to that kind of stuff. I'm sure with the almost 5,000 planes that went to Russia, if we could figure a way to make some contacts out there, there'd probably be something that could be found.
And what are we looking at here?
So this is the another part of the tail. If you on that first picture, you can see there was a shiny new panel. This is what's behind it. And so we pulled that panel off, and then you can see what's inside of there. So what we're going to end up doing is stripping that shiny panel right there. Exactly.
There? Okay.
That's what's underneath it. And so we're working on stripping all of that down. So all the green yellow paint there, so that when we get it back before we get it back together, we'll prime it and get it all ready to put it back to the airplane. And then you see some of the tubes and wiring and stuff. That's where that runs through the back of the airplane.
Yeah. So what is that tubing? Do you know offhand?
Don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. I was trying to imagine what ran to the tail.
Yeah. Don't know.
So the 12. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
All right. 12 Planes of Christmas, that'll be coming up in a few weeks. This is your chance to help support the Central Texas Wing as they try to put this airplane back together as quickly as possible. When it comes time, have you decided, are you going to keep the same paint scheme that it's had before, go with something different, or is that still something to be determined in the future?
Well, I can tell you it's going to be olive drab, the green, and where it goes from there, we haven't had any big discussions if it'll remain Miss Connie or it'll look like something else, because you've seen those pictures through the history. It started as a Russian airplane and then moved on to different things. So we haven't really gotten to the discussion on what it's going to look like when we get to the end, unless there's some conversations you've had with the staff there, Zach.
No, but that's so far down the line. We got to get the mechanical side of it done first before we figure out how to make it look good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to jumpstart the conversation for you. That's all.
Well, in the short term, our goal is to get this tail complete in the next few months, painted, everything on the shelf, because project this size, you go in and work on it every day and you don't make any progress. It doesn't feel like you're making any progress. So our goal is to get a few pieces and get them completely done, so that we're actually making progress instead of just going in every day and chipping away at a little piece of it, to actually have okay, we've got this part done, we're going to put it on the shelf so we can move to the next piece. So that's what we're aiming for with the tail. That's why we got it out, and we've really been concentrating on it for the last month or two.
So is there a project plan to say we're going to do the tail first, then we're going to do the wings or whatever, or I mean, is there a long range sort of a plan that you're putting together, or you're going to get the tail done and then look at the next?
Yeah, well, we were focused on the tail, and that's kind of where we're aiming to right now. But in the last couple of days, we've had a vendor come and say that they can make us some of the parts for the wings. So that's going to become our priority in the next couple of weeks, because they need those to use as templates. So we haven't laid out a long-term plan. We kind of know where we're going, but between things like that, hey, this vendor coming up out of nowhere saying, hey, we need this, and we need that to be a priority, and then working on the other airplanes that are actually flying. We were kind of just working our way across the project that way, because, if Tab comes back from being on the road and she needs some work, that's where all the hands go until it's ready to go out for the next show. And the same with the Rose and the little airplanes. So.
Yeah, certainly a hangar full of great aircraft and just a great core of volunteers who help keep those airplanes flying. Talking a little bit about the wing, about how many members do you have today?
It's just over 200, I believe, for our wing. We're one of the larger wings in the CAF.
And is everybody in the Central Texas area, or do you have members around the country, around the world?
We've got members from all over the place. We were just talking about that with our adjutant the other day, and it's pretty neat on the support that we have, virtually from everywhere. We actually have members that are also members of other wings and other states, but we even have pilots for some of our aircraft that come in from outside of the local area. So that's the neat part, which also puts a little bit of stress on the members that are there working on the airplanes and doing that kind of stuff, because the mechanics kind of have to be local to get any sort of continuity with the work that they're doing. And but it's the group of people we have, the backgrounds, we have tech people, we have mechanical people, we have pilots, that's the part that I really enjoy with the organization is getting all these different people from different backgrounds that you would never in a million years think would sit down together, and they all have one thing in common, that they like these airplanes and they want to preserve the history of them, and they all bring something to the table that it's crazy what you get off these off the wall things that we might need for the hangar or we might need for an airplane, and oh yeah, Joe will do that, or he's got experience in that. And so that's the part that I really think is incredible. We hope to grow that as well, both as the national global organization of the CAF as well as our local wing.
Yeah, and again, we're kind of talking about the airplane because it's going to be part of the 12 Planes of Christmas, but there is an opportunity for people to support the aircraft year round, either by joining the wing, being part of that. You could be an aircraft sponsor, and help support through financial and moral, or little moral support as well. So there's lots of different ways to support aside from 12 Planes of Christmas, which we encourage people to donate and make sure that those donations go to the P-39. If someone would like to know more about the wing, you've got a website, I would imagine.
Yeah, you can. Easiest thing I always tell everybody is just Google Central Texas wing, and we're the first thing that pops up there. It's again, we also have phone numbers, emails, all that kind of stuff, and I'll get that for you here in just a second to put out there. But yeah, it's real responsive, and we love talking about our airplanes to people, and our hangar, our facility is incredible too. Being one of the last surviving World War II facilities out there as well.
Exactly, and not only the historic aspect of the hangar, but you also have a pretty extensive museum inside as well.
Our museum is something that we really enjoy. We have some members that's their primary focus is that, and it talks about the history of the facility, the history of the aircraft. And some of the exhibits that we have in there, even some cutaways of, various airplanes, engines, weaponry. We talk about the little raids. It's a really neat kind of hidden gem. And the other thing that, again, is my favorite part about the wing itself is when people come in, as soon as you walk through the hangar, you smell, 70, 80 years of oil and grease and sweat, and like it transports you back in time, and then you get up and get next to the airplanes, and in most cases get into them, because we have docents that'll actually get people hands on, and that's something that you don't get in a lot of other places.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a real one-on-one kind of thing, because we're a small organization. So
very good. Kevin, do you have a favorite artifact that's in the museum?
In the museum, I'd probably say the Doolittle. Two things I'll go with: the Doolittle rarest stuff, because I've had an association with them in my Air Force career and in that unit in 12th Air Force, and then the history of the airfield itself. We've got some good stuff on the San Marcos airfield because it's the place where all the navigators were trained in World War II. And I'm a nav, so I trained in San Antonio, and then coming here and finding out that this is the nav school of the 40s. It was pretty neat to find that and see all the stuff that we've got that kind of describes that history. So that kind of hit home for me, because it was, what navigation was 80 years ago before I started doing it. So it was kind of neat.
Very good. Zach, what about you? Any favorite artifacts from the museum?
Like I said, it's the museum itself. I mean, the facility is just incredible. Every time I walk in there, I feel very fortunate to be able to get in there and take a step back in time, just being on, the old Army Air Corps base, Air Force base, and seeing the same stuff happening. It's just pretty neat, and I think it's really remarkable.
Great. Just a few minutes left in our show. And Kevin, any final thoughts before we wrap up tonight?
I guess back to the 39. I mean, it's really a unique airplane, and the opportunity to get it where it should be as basically a flying museum piece. And with only 3 of them left in the world still flying, I mean, we can't miss this opportunity to get it back in that condition, that right off the factory condition that we want to get it to. So hopefully we can get there over the next 3 years to get it back where it belongs.
Sounds good. Zach, how about you?
Same thing. I mean, again, it's such a neat airplane. I was reading some of the questions that were popping up about the doors, and I had pulled up some of my notes for some of the people that were asking, and nobody really knows about why it's got 2 doors. Only one of them was usually used. It actually is the only one that had the inside door handle. The other one had, there was kind of an emergency exit. Even the weight and balance of the airplane. I mean, how often can you go see an airplane that is a tricycle gear airplane with the engine out of it and it not have weights and stuff to keep it from tipping over? That's one of those things that just always strikes me as kind of neat, for some of the history and the uniqueness of the airplane. But yeah.
It's a good one. As you said, it's a very unique piece of aviation history, and we are so pleased that the Central Texas Wing is taking the time, effort, and resources to bring it back and make sure that it's restored in as best a condition as it can be, and also bring it up to modern standards to be able to operate in today's current airspace. So I encourage you to join the 12 Planes of Christmas, donate what you can to the P-39 project, join the wing, find out more about all the aircraft they have, all the activities that they have. It's as Zach said, it's one of the largest CAF wings and one of the most active, and certainly glad to have the Central Texas Wing as part of the Commemorative Air Force. And we do want to salute both of you for taking time out tonight to be on the show, and also to your fellow wing members for all you do to help keep preserving the stories of the men and women in the aircraft of World War II. So thank you so very much for being with us again tonight.
I was going to say the website for the wing is centraltexaswing.org. It's pretty easy. I should remember that, given that's kind of my job over there. But yeah, centraltexaswing.org. Sure, they can go to find out our events and all the fun stuff that we do. So
very good. Very good. For those of you watching tonight, thank you for joining us. We love to hear from you. Tell us your thoughts on this episode or ideas you have for future topics you'd like us to explore. Just drop us a line at media@cafhq.org. If you enjoyed the show tonight, please share it on your social media platforms. And remember, if you are subscribing on YouTube, click that bell icon. You'll get notifications when our new episodes of Warbird Tube are posted. Until next time, I'm Steve Buss, wishing you blue skies and tailwinds. Have a great night.